The room was quiet except for the faint sound of the alien wind pressing against the walls of the small shelter. The human sat on the edge of the bed, his new wife beside him. The marriage had happened quickly, more out of survival than tradition. He had saved her life during the war, and the elders had bound them together in a ceremony that was half ritual, half gratitude. He thought the night would bring peace, maybe even a little warmth after months of loneliness. But instead, she turned to him with eyes full of tension, her hands trembling as if she carried a secret too heavy to keep. She leaned closer, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "I need to ask you something," she whispered. He thought it might be something simple, maybe a request for safety or comfort, but her next words froze him in place. "My sister? She needs to be with a male before they force her into marriage. I want you to help her." He blinked, not sure he had heard right. For a moment he thought it was a cruel joke, a trick meant to test his loyalty. But her face was deadly serious. Her alien features tightened in both fear and urgency. His breath caught, and he shook his head. "What are you asking me?" His voice was low, as if speaking louder would make the request more real. "She is young," his wife said, her words rushing out. "Tomorrow, the council will take her. They will give her to the champion of the clan. He will break her, and after that, no choice will be hers anymore. She begged me for help, and I can give her only one way out. You." The human's chest tightened. He remembered the champion, the brute he had seen during the wedding feast. Twice his size, scarred from battles, eyes filled with cruelty. That monster would treat her not as a person, but as an object. The thought made his stomach turn. But still, he could not believe what his wife was asking. "You mean, you want me to?" He could not even finish the sentence. His wife grabbed his arm, desperate now. "You don't understand our world. For us, once a girl is taken, she has no voice, no power. But if she learns with you first, she will not be seen as weak. She can claim she was chosen, not stolen. Please, I beg you. You are human. You protect, not destroy. You will not hurt her." The words struck him like a blade. She was not testing him. She was pleading, truly pleading, with the trust of someone who had no one else left. His mind spun, fighting between his human sense of morality and the alien law that ruled this place. Was this a trap set by the council? If he agreed, would they accuse him of corruption, of dishonor? But if he refused, what would happen to her sister? The silence stretched too long. He saw her eyes flick toward the door, and for the first time, he realized they were not alone. A shadow stood there, small and trembling. The sister. She stepped forward slowly, like a frightened animal unsure if she should run. Her skin was pale under the dim light, her eyes wide, full of shame and fear. She avoided his gaze, looking instead at the floor, her hands clutched tightly in front of her. She could not be much younger than his wife, but the innocence in her movements made her seem almost like a child. The human swallowed hard, his throat dry. His wife's hand tightened on his arm, her voice breaking. "She trusts you. Please, don't let them take her tomorrow." The sister finally raised her eyes to him just for a second. There was no malice in her, no trick, no test, only desperation. The kind of desperation he had seen in war refugees, in children hiding from bombs, in people who knew tomorrow could be worse than death. His heart pounded as he looked between the two sisters. This was not the life he had imagined when he first agreed to the marriage. He thought it might be strange, maybe difficult, but never like this. Never a request so heavy that it could change everything. The air in the room grew heavier, pressing against him, making it hard to breathe. His wife's voice came again, trembling now. "If you refuse, I will understand. But if you refuse, she will suffer. She will be broken, and I will live knowing I let it happen." He tried to find words, but none came. Every part of him screamed to step back, to say no, to refuse something that felt impossible. Yet his chest burned with anger at the thought of that brutal champion putting his hands on the terrified girl in front of him. The sister finally spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "If you cannot, then just stay with me tonight, so I do not feel alone." The words cut deeper than anything else. She was not begging for passion, not for desire, but for safety, for a chance to choose something different, even if just for a single night. He realized then that this was not about betrayal or sin. It was about survival. The night stretched ahead, and his choice hung in the air like a blade. If he agreed, he might be hunted, punished, even killed. If he refused, an innocent girl would be thrown to a monster. His wife's eyes locked on his, wide and desperate, silently begging him to decide. Outside, the sound of heavy boots echoed faintly in the distance. Guards making their rounds. Time was running out. The younger sister stepped into the room slowly, her bare feet making almost no sound on the stone floor. Her hands were clenched tightly in front of her, and her shoulders curled inward as if she was trying to make herself smaller. She did not look at the human directly. Instead, her eyes moved quickly, glancing at her sister for courage, then falling back to the ground as though meeting his gaze would burn her. The human could feel her fear. It was heavy in the air, mixed with something even darker. Shame. She looked as though she carried a weight far too great for someone so young. He shifted uncomfortably, unsure if he should stand, move closer, or simply stay still. Every small movement he made seemed to make her flinch, as though she was prepared for cruelty at any moment. His wife moved toward her sister, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "It's all right," she whispered softly in her own tongue, then repeated in broken human language, "He will not harm you." Those words made the younger sister's eyes flicker up, just for a moment, before dropping down again. The human took a slow breath. He had seen women like her before, back on Earth during wartime. Refugees, broken by the hands of men who believed power meant control. That same look of guarded pain was in her eyes now. His chest tightened at the thought. Finally, the younger sister spoke, her voice thin like fragile glass. "I don't want the champion," she whispered. Her words trembled with fear. "He will hurt me." Her voice broke, and she shook her head. "They say it is the way of things, that I must endure it, but I can't." Her words struck him harder than any weapon could. He had always thought alien customs were strange, but to hear it from her own lips, to see the horror written across her face, made him feel a burning anger rise inside. He looked at his wife, who nodded quickly, eyes full of urgency. "You see now," she said softly. "This is why I asked you. Only you can keep her safe." The human rubbed his forehead, his mind racing. "But if anyone finds out—" He stopped himself. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The sister's fate was already sealed if he did nothing. The younger sister glanced at him again, her lips trembling. "They will say I am spoiled if I stay here tonight, but better spoiled than broken." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of someone standing on the edge of despair. A long silence followed. Outside, he could hear faint noises, the echo of guards patrolling, the creak of metal gates in the distance. Danger was always near. Inside, the three of them stood in a small triangle of tension. His wife's desperate plea, the younger sister's trembling figure, and his own human sense of morality clashed in the room like invisible storms. He wanted to reach out, to tell the girl she was safe now, but he knew trust would not come so easily. Instead, he spoke slowly, his voice calm. "No one will hurt you tonight. Not while I'm here." The girl's head jerked up slightly, her eyes widening in surprise at his tone. She had expected a command, maybe a demand, not a promise. For the first time, something faint flickered in her eyes. Hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. The wife pulled her sister closer, whispering in their own language, and the younger one nodded weakly. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Her breathing was shallow, but she no longer looked like she was ready to bolt out the door. The human remained where he was, every muscle in his body tight with unease. He knew this moment could decide everything. His wife's trust, the sister's safety, and even his own life were now tangled together. Somewhere deep inside, he also knew the guards outside were not just patrolling. They were watching. As the night stretched on, questions from the younger sister began to spill out, cautious at first, then more openly. Why are humans different? Why do you not take what you want? Why do you ask before you touch? Each question cut deeper into him because the answers were so simple to him, yet so foreign to her. He answered gently, his words shaping an image of a different world, one where women had choices and men did not rule with fear. Her eyes shone with wonder, as if hearing about such a place was like being told of a paradise that could never exist. The more he spoke, the more her body seemed to loosen, as though the chains of fear around her were slowly weakening. But just as the tension seemed to ease, a sudden, loud knocking shook the door, making all three of them freeze in terror. The human's hand went instantly to the weapon hidden under his coat. His wife pulled her sister behind her, her face pale. The pounding came again, harder this time, echoing through the night. Whoever was outside was not there for a friendly visit. The younger sister's lips moved silently, forming words she dared not speak aloud. They know. The human's heart raced. He knew she might be right. And if they knew, then the danger was far greater than he had imagined. The human sat at the edge of the bed after the pounding stopped, every nerve alive with tension. He could still hear the faint voices outside, talking in low tones. He tried to calm his breathing, though his chest felt like it was wrapped in iron bands. His wife leaned close, whispering, "You must decide. If you help her, we are all marked. If you refuse, she is lost forever." The sister's eyes locked on him again, trembling but stronger than before. For the first time, she seemed ready to face her fate, whatever it was. "Better to be punished for choosing," she whispered, "than to be broken without choice." Her words sank into him like fire. He realized then that he was no longer simply caught in their culture's rules. He was standing at a line that would change their lives forever. The door rattled again, but no one entered. Instead, silence spread outside, followed by fading footsteps. Whoever had been there was gone, for now. But the danger had only just begun. The human knew the night ahead would not be one of rest. Every word, every choice, every breath was now a fight against a world determined to crush two young women, and against his own fear of what tomorrow would bring. The air in the dimly lit chamber felt heavy and tense, as though every breath carried the weight of unspoken fears. The human walked slowly through the metallic corridors, his mind alert to every sound. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor, but beneath that mechanical rhythm, he could feel the subtle heartbeat of danger. He had never been in a place like this before. Alien, vast, and strangely alive. Shadows flickered along the walls as the lights above shifted, and every corner seemed to hide a secret, a trap waiting for an unwary step. His new wife walked beside him, her hand brushing against his, almost as a quiet warning. Her eyes, normally so full of playful warmth, were now wide with concern. She had never been this serious before, and he realized that whatever lay ahead would demand more than courage. It would demand sharp instinct and absolute trust. The young sister walked a few steps behind them, her small hands clutching the hem of her garment. Her eyes darted nervously around the corridor, taking in the strange symbols etched into the walls, the subtle glowing panels, and the occasional faint hiss of machinery. Despite her fear, there was a spark in her gaze, a quiet defiance that refused to let terror dominate her. The mission had been simple in theory: help the sister understand her own feelings, her own desires, and navigate a world she had been taught to fear. But as the human stepped deeper into the alien structure, he realized theory and reality were far apart. Each step felt deliberate, each sound amplified, as if the ship itself were testing them, measuring their resolve. He could feel the tension in the atmosphere, the way the air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as though the walls themselves were aware of the choice they were about to witness. A sudden movement ahead made him stop. A panel shifted, a shadow detached itself from the wall, and a figure stepped into view. Not an enemy, not yet, but an observer. The alien looked at them with piercing eyes, its expression unreadable, and then slowly stepped aside. The path was clear, but the message was unmistakable. They were being watched. Every choice, every hesitation would be noted, judged, and possibly challenged. The human tightened his grip on the small, concealed weapon at his side, ready for anything. The younger sister's hand brushed against his sleeve. "Are they dangerous?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He shook his head, keeping his tone calm but firm. "Not if we stay together. Stick close. Watch carefully, but do not let fear guide your steps." She nodded, drawing a deep breath. There was something about this moment, the way her fear mingled with determination, that made him respect her even more. She was learning quickly, faster than he had anticipated, and he realized the lesson would not just be about danger, but about courage and trust. As they progressed, the chamber opened into a larger space. The ceiling arched high above them, dotted with alien lights that pulsed like distant stars. Strange devices lined the walls, blinking and whirring with unknown functions. Some panels displayed shifting images. Others emitted low hums that made the floor beneath them vibrate faintly. The human could sense the purpose of some of the machines, training devices perhaps, or observation tools, but others remained mysteries. It was a place of learning, of trial, and the tension in the room seemed to encourage every emotion, amplifying curiosity, fear, and anticipation. His wife stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. "This is it," she said quietly. "This is where it begins." Her gaze turned to the younger sister, who swallowed hard but did not look away. The human could feel the unspoken pressure, the expectation, the rules, and the stakes. It was not simply about understanding desires. It was about navigating a world filled with judgment, testing, and scrutiny. Every action mattered. Every hesitation could signal weakness or courage. The younger sister stepped forward, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. She approached one of the glowing devices and tentatively touched it. The panel responded instantly, displaying a series of images that were both strange and mesmerizing. Each image seemed designed to provoke thought, challenge instinct, and reveal truths about the observer. The human watched carefully, his mind analyzing each reaction, ready to guide her, protect her, but also allowing her the freedom to discover, to make mistakes, and to learn. Minutes stretched into a tense rhythm, each moment weighted with potential consequences. The human observed every subtle change, the flicker of hesitation in her eyes, the tightening of her fists, the way her body leaned forward with curiosity. He understood that this was not just training in the traditional sense. It was education in courage, in self-awareness, in navigating an environment that demanded both respect and assertiveness. Each choice she made would shape her understanding, her confidence, and her relationship with him and her sister. A sudden alarm sounded, echoing sharply through the chamber. The lights shifted, casting long, jagged shadows. It was not danger, but a simulation, a test of composure under pressure. The younger sister froze, then looked to him. He offered a small nod, signaling reassurance. "Breathe. Focus. This is part of learning. You can handle it." She inhaled deeply, steadying herself, then continued her steps, guided by curiosity and determination. Time seemed to bend in the chamber. Each trial was a lesson, each interaction a chance to build confidence. The human's mind raced, not just with strategy, but with admiration for her resilience. She was growing under pressure, absorbing lessons faster than he anticipated. The devices, the observation, the subtle challenges, all combined into an environment that would push her boundaries and reveal strength she had not known she possessed. By the time they reached the final device, the younger sister's posture had changed. She no longer trembled with fear. Her eyes shone with a mixture of understanding and quiet triumph. She had learned not just about the alien world, but about herself. She had faced uncertainty, observation, and subtle challenges, and emerged stronger. The human felt a surge of pride, tempered by relief. The lessons were difficult, the path uncertain, but she had succeeded in a way that exceeded expectation. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the human looked back at the glowing panels and the devices that had tested them. He knew this was only the beginning, that more challenges awaited. But in that moment, he saw the younger sister not as a frightened child, but as someone ready to face the unknown, equipped with courage, wisdom, and the trust of those who had guided her. The path ahead was still fraught with danger, with choices that could alter their lives forever. But for now, they had taken the first true step together, strong, united, and prepared for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. The morning sky was gray when the human was dragged from his home by alien enforcers. Their rough hands gripped his arms, pulling him through the narrow streets as curious eyes followed from the shadows. His wife screamed and tried to hold on, but one of the guards shoved her back. Still, she followed close behind, refusing to leave him. The younger sister walked too, her face pale, her steps trembling, as though guilt weighed her down with every movement. The great hall of the council loomed ahead, tall stone pillars carved with ancient markings, cold light spilling through high windows. Inside, a crowd had already gathered, whispering, waiting to see the fate of the human outsider who had dared to interfere with their traditions. At the far end sat the council elders, their robes heavy, their faces full of judgment. In the center stood the chief, a broad figure with eyes like fire and a voice that shook the walls. "You have broken our law," the chief thundered the moment the human was thrown before him. "You have corrupted the sister of your wife. You have shamed this clan with your human ways. The human lifted his head, his jaw tight. He wanted to speak, but before he could, his wife stepped forward. She stood tall, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. It was my request. He did nothing dishonorable. If you must punish someone, punish me. I asked him to protect my sister. Gasps rippled through the hall. Women rarely spoke in the council chamber, never against the chief, never in defense of a man. The elders leaned forward, their eyes narrowing, their fingers tapping against the carved armrests of their thrones. The chief growled low, his teeth flashing. You dare speak against me? Against the law? But she did not back down. Her voice trembled with fear, yet her body held firm. Yes, because the law is cruel. You call it tradition, but it is nothing but chains for women like us. I would rather stand beside a human who protects than kneel before a champion who destroys. The hall exploded in whispers, half in shock, half in awe. Some hissed that she was corrupted, others whispered that perhaps she was brave. The human's heart pounded as he watched her. She was risking everything for him, for her sister. He felt both pride and fear, knowing the punishment for such defiance could be death. The chief raised his hand, silencing the crowd. His eyes burned with rage as he pointed at the human. Your kind does not belong here. You twist our women with soft words and false promises. You are weak, yet you poison them with weakness. For this crime, you will be executed. The enforcers stepped closer, their weapons ready, but before they could move, a small voice broke the air. It was the sister. She stepped forward from behind her elder sibling, her body shaking, but her eyes shining with determination. Stop, she cried, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. The hall fell silent, stunned that she dared to speak. Her hands clenched at her sides as she looked directly at the chief. It was not him who corrupted me. It was me who chose to stay with him. I asked for his protection. I asked for his company. He did not force me. He gave me something none of you ever have. He let me choose. The crowd gasped again. The words of a young girl had never carried so much weight in that place. The elders shifted uneasily, some looking away, others watching with sharp interest. The chief's face darkened like a storm cloud. You dare defy your clan? You shame your bloodline? Her knees trembled, but she did not break. Better to shame my bloodline than to lose myself to your champion, she said, her voice cracking. I would rather belong to no one than be broken by him. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. The human could feel every pair of eyes on the girl, on her sister, and on him. For a heartbeat, he thought maybe the council would listen. Maybe her words had pierced their armor of tradition. But then the chief slammed his fist against the stone table. The sound like thunder. You are corrupted beyond saving, he roared. Your words are poison. Your courage is rebellion. If the human has made you so bold, then he is more dangerous than I thought. He will be executed, and you... His hand pointed to the sister, his voice dripping with fury. You will be given to the rival clan, where no mercy will protect you. The hall erupted into shouts, some in agreement, others in protest. The sisters clung to each other, fear etched into their faces. The human rose to his feet despite the guards pressing him down, his eyes locked on the chief with defiance burning inside. He knew then that words would no longer be enough. And just as the guards prepared to strike him down, the heavy doors of the hall burst open. A group of armored warriors stormed inside, carrying the mark of the rival clan. Their leader strode forward, his grin wide, his eyes greedy. You argue too long, he sneered. The girl is ours by right. If you will not give her, we will take her. The hall dissolved into chaos, voices shouting, guards clashing with the intruders. The chief shouted orders, but the rival warriors pushed through, their eyes locked on the terrified sister. The human's blood surged with fury. He tore free from the guards, his fists tightening, his body ready to fight. This was no longer about law or custom or even survival. This was about protecting two sisters who had no one else. The younger sister cried out as rough hands reached for her, and the human stepped forward, planting himself between her and the enemy. His wife clutched her sister's hand, pulling her close, while the crowd roared in shock. In that moment, the human knew there was no turning back. The council would never forgive him. The rival clan would never stop hunting. But he also knew something else. He would not let them take her. Not now. Not ever. The rival leader sneered. You think a human can stop us? The human's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing. Try me. And as the first blow struck, the hall became a battlefield. The clash inside the council hall was like a storm tearing through stone. Warriors from the rival clan pushed forward with snarls, their heavy weapons glinting in the cold light. The council guards tried to block them, but the invaders were prepared, stronger, and reckless. The crowd scattered toward the edges of the hall, their voices a mix of fear and excitement, watching history unfold in front of them. In the middle of this chaos stood the human, his body burning with determination. His wife clutched her sister close, shielding her as much as she could, but the rival warriors kept advancing, their leader pointing directly at the younger girl. "She belongs to us," he growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "By law, she is ours. Move aside or die." The human stepped in front of them, his stance firm, his hands ready even without a weapon, his eyes locked on the leader. "She belongs to no one," he said, his voice steady and sharp. It was not a shout, not a scream, but a statement that cut through the noise. The rival warriors laughed, their cruel voices carrying mockery. They had seen humans before, usually as slaves, servants, or weak creatures begging for mercy. None of them expected this one to stand tall against them. But the sister's eyes widened, and for the first time in her life, she saw a man who spoke not of ownership, but of freedom. The leader sneered. "Then you will die first." He charged, his massive frame rushing toward the human. The crowd gasped, expecting the fight to end quickly. But the human moved faster than anyone thought possible. He sidestepped, grabbed a fallen staff from the floor, and swung it with precise force, striking the leader across the face. The crack of bone echoed, and the giant stumbled, blood spilling from his mouth. Shouts rose from both sides. The rival clan roared in anger, rushing forward to avenge their leader, while the council guards hesitated, unsure if they should defend the human or let him be torn apart. The hall shook with battle as fists, blades, and bodies collided. The younger sister clung to her sibling, her breath fast, her heart hammering. Never had she seen such defiance. Never had she believed anyone would fight for her. She had been raised to think she was nothing but property. Yet here was a human battling an entire clan for her right to exist. Something stirred deep within her, something stronger than fear, courage. The fight raged on. The human used every trick he knew, fighting not with brute strength, but with speed and cunning. He ducked under strikes, shoved enemies into each other, and turned their size against them. His fists struck throats, his staff cracked ribs, his boots kicked knees until warriors fell. He fought like a soldier, not like a brute, and that difference stunned everyone watching. Still, he was only one man. Sweat poured down his face, his body bruised and battered as more enemies came. His wife shouted his name, fear breaking her voice, but he only tightened his grip and stood taller. "Stay behind me," he roared, his voice breaking through the chaos. Then something unexpected happened. The sister stepped forward, her body trembling, but her voice clear. "Stop!" she screamed at the rival clan. For a moment, the hall froze. All eyes turned to her as she stood tall beside the human, her thin frame shaking yet unbroken. "I will not go with you. I will not be your prize. I choose him." She pointed to the human, her voice growing louder. "He protects me. He gives me choice. None of you ever did." The council gasped. The elders shifted uncomfortably, and even some of the guards lowered their weapons. Never in their history had a young woman spoken like this. Not in front of the chief, not in front of her people. The rival clan leader wiped the blood from his mouth, his face twisted in fury. "Your choice means nothing," he spat. "You are female. You have no right to choose." But the crowd was not the same as before. Whispers spread quickly, rippling like fire through dry grass. She chose. She dared to choose. Some spoke in shock, others in admiration. For the first time, the voices of doubt were louder than the voices of obedience. The human, breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut above his eye, looked at the girl standing beside him. In her eyes, he saw a spark of strength that had not been there before. She was terrified, yes, but she was no longer broken. She was fighting too, in her own way, with words instead of fists. The chief slammed his fist against the council table, his voice shaking with rage. "Enough!" he roared. "Silence this madness. Kill the human and drag the girl away." But his order did not carry the same weight as before. Too many had seen the courage of the sisters. Too many had seen the human stand against impossible odds. The rival clan hesitated, uncertain. Even their leader, bloodied and furious, could see the tide shifting. His pride demanded victory, but his eyes darted nervously around the hall. If the crowd turned fully, his clan might be outnumbered. The younger sister, breathing heavily, turned her face to the elders. "If you let them take me, then your law is nothing but chains. But if you let me choose, then maybe there is hope for us." The hall went silent, every ear straining to hear the elder's response. The human stood ready, battered but unbroken, prepared to fight until his last breath. His wife held her sister tightly, her eyes full of fire. The rival clan's leader spat blood on the floor and snarled, "This is not over. If the council is too weak to decide, then we will settle it ourselves." He raised his hand, signaling his warriors to prepare again. The human lifted his staff, his body aching but steady. "Then come," he said. His voice was raw, but it carried strength. "But know this, you will never take her while I still breathe." The hall trembled under the weight of those words, and in that moment, everyone watching knew this fight was no longer just about one girl. It was about choice, about freedom, about a challenge to laws that had ruled for centuries. And as the rival warriors prepared to strike again, the council chamber held its breath, waiting to see if the human's defiance would ignite a fire too bright to ever be put out. The rival clan rushed forward again, their weapons raised high, their voices echoing with rage. The sound of metal clashing filled the hall as chaos broke out once more. The human stood at the center, his body already bruised and bleeding, but his eyes burned with determination. He would not let them take the younger sister, no matter how many warriors came at him. His grip tightened on the staff in his hands, the wood slick with sweat and blood. The first warrior lunged. Swinging a blade meant to cut him down in one strike. The human ducked low, rolling to the side, and slammed the end of the staff into the alien's knee. A sickening crack echoed, and the warrior fell screaming. Another rushed from behind, but the human spun quickly, the staff striking his face, knocking him backward into his own clan. The crowd gasped in shock. Humans were not supposed to fight like this, not supposed to be this fast, this clever. The rival leader growled, his fury boiling over. "Kill him! Break him!" he shouted, but even as his warriors obeyed, doubt flickered in their eyes. Every time they thought they had the human cornered, he slipped away, striking from angles they did not expect. He was not fighting like them, with brute strength and predictable power. He fought like a soldier trained in survival, using every mistake his enemies made against them. The younger sister watched with wide eyes, clutching her elder sibling's hand tightly. Fear still gripped her, but there was something else there now. Hope. Each time the human rose again after a strike, each time he pushed back against overwhelming odds, she felt something inside her stir. For the first time in her life, she saw that the strength of a man did not always mean cruelty. It could mean protection. It could mean sacrifice. But the human was only one man, and his body was reaching its limit. His breath came in ragged gasps, his arms shook with exhaustion. A blade cut across his shoulder, tearing through cloth and skin, sending fire through his nerves. He stumbled, blood dripping onto the floor, and for a moment it seemed he might fall. His wife screamed his name, her voice filled with desperation, but he forced himself to stand again, gripping the staff tighter. "I said no one will take her," he growled through clenched teeth. His legs trembled, but his eyes held steady. He planted himself like a wall before the sisters, daring anyone to come closer. The rival clan hesitated. They had expected to crush him quickly, to tear through him like paper, but instead he had stood against them longer than any of their strongest warriors. Whispers spread through the hall. Humans were weak, yet this one was not breaking. He was fighting not for glory, not for dominance, but for others. That was something they had never seen before. The rival leader could feel the weight of those whispers. His own warriors glanced uneasily at one another, their strikes slower now, their movements less certain. He roared, trying to pull them back into fury. "Do not fear him. He is nothing. He bleeds like any of us." With a howl, the leader charged forward, his massive body crashing toward the human like a wave. The human braced himself. The impact rattled his bones, sending him crashing into the ground. Pain exploded in his chest, and for a heartbeat he could not breathe. The leader pinned him down, raising his blade for the final strike. The sisters screamed, the crowd roared, and it seemed the fight was over. But the human's hand shot up, gripping a shard of broken wood from the shattered staff. With all his strength, he drove it upward into the leader's shoulder. The giant roared in pain, stumbling back, his blade dropping from his hand. The human forced himself up, his vision blurry, his body screaming with pain, but his spirit unbroken. He grabbed the fallen blade and held it high, pointing it directly at the leader's throat. The hall fell silent. Every eye was on him now, the battered, bleeding human standing tall with a weapon aimed at the rival chief. His voice cut through the silence, rough but steady. "You fight for pride. I fight for them. That is why I stand. That is why you fall." The rival warriors froze, unsure if they should move. None dared to step forward. The leader clutched his bleeding shoulder, fury and disbelief written across his face. Never had he been humiliated like this. Never had anyone, least of all a human, forced him to the ground. The younger sister stepped forward then, her voice strong for the first time. "Do you see?" she shouted, her eyes sweeping across the hall. "He is one man, one human, yet he protects two women against an entire clan. He is not weak, he is stronger than all of you, because he fights for something greater than himself." The crowd erupted into gasps and murmurs. Some shouted in agreement, others in anger, but none could deny the truth of what they had seen. The human was not like the males they knew. His strength was not in domination, but in protection, and it shook the very foundation of their beliefs. The rival leader, humiliated and wounded, staggered back, spitting blood onto the floor. "This is not finished," he growled. "You may win today, but we will return. She will never be safe." With that, he signaled his warriors, and slowly, reluctantly, they retreated from the hall. Their eyes avoided the humans, their pride shattered, their silence louder than any roar. The hall was left in eerie quiet. The council elders sat frozen, their faces pale, unsure how to respond. Tradition had been challenged, broken in front of everyone. The human stood, the weapon still in his hand, his chest heaving, blood dripping, but his eyes unyielding. His wife rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him, her tears wet against his skin. The younger sister stepped forward too, her hands trembling, but this time not with fear. She looked at him as if seeing the world for the first time. The whispers in the hall grew louder. Some spoke of rebellion, others of change. For centuries, women had no voice. But now a single girl had shouted her choice, and a human had defended it with his life. The air felt heavy, charged with something new. The human lowered the blade at last, his voice hoarse but clear. "No more chains, no more stolen voices." His words echoed in the silent chamber, words that none dared to challenge. And though the battle had ended, everyone knew this was only the beginning of something far greater. The silence in the council hall felt heavier than stone. The rival clan had left, but their threats still hung in the air like poison. The elders sat stiff in their chairs, their eyes shifting nervously, their robes rustling as they whispered among themselves. The guards stood frozen, waiting for orders, while the crowd murmured like restless waves. Everyone was waiting for the final judgment. The human stood in the center, bloodied, bruised, and barely standing. But his grip was steady on the blade he had taken from the rival leader. His wife held his arm tightly, afraid he would collapse. The younger sister stood just behind him, her small frame no longer trembling, her chin lifted with a courage that had not been there before. For the first time, she looked like someone who belonged in the hall, not a frightened child waiting to be given away. The chief slammed his hand on the council table, his voice like thunder. "This is madness. A human has defied our laws, has spilled blood in our sacred hall, and now you all stand silent? Have you forgotten who rules here?" But his words did not carry the same power anymore. The crowd did not cheer for him, nor did they chant his name. Instead, they whispered about the human. They whispered about the sisters' defiance, about the courage they had seen. The air was no longer fully on the chief's side. One of the elders, an old woman with gray skin and tired eyes, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the noise like a knife. The law was meant to protect our people, not to destroy them. If a girl cannot speak her own choice, then what is the worth of our law? Today, we have seen something we cannot ignore. She turned her gaze to the human. This man is not weak. He is not corrupting. He is teaching us something we have long forgotten. The chief's face twisted with anger, but more elders nodded, some reluctantly, some with conviction. The crowd murmured louder, emboldened by the elder's words. The human could feel the tide turning, but he also knew one wrong move could shatter it all. The younger sister stepped forward, her voice carrying across the hall. I will not be silent. I will not belong to a man I do not choose. I am not spoiled. I am not broken. I choose my path, and I choose it now. I will not be given away like an object. Gasps rippled through the hall. The words were dangerous, but they were powerful. Women in the crowd lowered their heads, hiding faint smiles. Men shifted uncomfortably, uncertain if this was the beginning of something greater. The human placed his hand on the girl's shoulder, steadying her. His voice was rough, but steady. She has chosen. If you punish her, then you punish freedom itself. If you punish me, then you punish the one who only protected what was right. The chief roared, Enough! If we allow this, our traditions crumble. Our power crumbles. His voice cracked with desperation, and that crack did not go unnoticed. The people no longer feared him the same way. They had seen another kind of power, the kind that fought not for control, but for protection. Finally, the council made their decision. The oldest elder rose, leaning on his staff, and declared, The girl's choice will be respected. The human will not be executed. From this day forward, a woman's voice shall not be silenced if she chooses to speak it. The hall erupted into chaos. Some shouted in outrage, others in celebration. The chief's face burned with fury, but he could not fight against the will of the council and the shifting tide of the people. For the first time, tradition had bent under the weight of something new. The human lowered the blade, his body shaking with exhaustion. His wife clung to him, tears streaming down her face. The younger sister looked at the elders, her breath unsteady, but her eyes filled with relief. She had spoken her choice, and for the first time, it had been heard. As the council dismissed the crowd, people whispered about the human. Some called him dangerous. Others called him a savior. Word spread quickly. He was not just a husband, not just an outsider. He was the man who had forced the council to listen, the man who had given a voice to the voiceless. Later that night, when the hall was empty and the fires burned low, the human sat quietly with his wife and her sister. His body ached with every breath, but his heart felt strangely light. He had not planned to change their world. He had only wanted to protect them. Yet somehow, he had lit a spark that no one could put out. His wife rested her head against his shoulder, whispering softly, You not only saved her, you saved us all. The younger sister sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. She looked different now, still young, still fragile, but with a strength that had begun to take root. They called me weak all my life, she said quietly. But tonight, I was not weak. Because of you. The human shook his head. No, because of you. You spoke when no one else would. Outside, the village was restless, voices still murmuring, the rival clan's threat still hanging in the air. But something had changed forever. The old ways had cracked, the law had bent, a girl's choice had been honored, and at the center of it all was a human, standing bloodied but unbroken, his defiance reshaping an entire people. As the night deepened, he looked at the two sisters sitting beside him, one his wife, the other now bound to him not by law, but by trust. He knew danger still waited, that enemies would return, but he also knew something else. The galaxy had seen strength in humans before, but tonight it had seen something more dangerous than strength. It had seen compassion strong enough to change a world. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same again.